Thank you, Bill. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, it's Valentine's Day, so let's talk about love, not hate. Let's talk about peace, not war. Let's talk about healing, not harm, and unity, not division. Because 20 years after genocide, those are the things that we can and indeed should talk about if we have our sense of the future and if we want to live our lives as they've been given us to live together. It was a tense moment. Beata was running down the street in Nyamirambo. She knew that she could get home and she could knock on the door, even though someone had just screamed there's an Inyenzi in the street. It was a classmate of hers. She banged on the door didn't open, and there was a guy with a machete not far behind her. She ran across the courtyard, down the yard, and at the end of that blind alley was a tin gate, and she knew it was locked. But nevertheless, she banged on the gate, knowing it wouldn't open, and it did. She fell through the gate was slammed shut, and on the other side was an 11-year-old girl in a hijab, Aisha. The guy with the machete came over the top of the gate. The girls ran across the yard and into the house, screaming. The owner of the house came out to find out what was happening and confronted the killer, who was screaming, "Give me the girl, I know she's in here." He called the girl and his own daughter, Aisha, out of the house, and he stood and held their hands in the doorway of his house. And he said to the killer, "You kill my daughter before you kill this girl. Now get off my property." He left, threatening to come back. He didn't. By the end of the genocide, Yahya had saved 30 people. I sat with him 7 years later, and I said to him, "Why did you do that?" He said to me, "Well, it says in the Quran, if you save a single life, it's as if you save the whole world. If you destroy a single life, it's as if you destroy the whole world." Very similar to a text at the end of Schindler's List, which the founder of the USC Shoah Foundation, Steven Spielberg, made the center of the film. Why? Because somewhere at the center of that was an ethic, a common ethic, which spans generations and time and traditions, in which if we take responsibly our duty within our world to those around us, then these things cannot happen. Yahya was a remarkable man. Oskar Schindler was a remarkable man. But what was remarkable about them was they were both very ordinary people in their own way. And so there, at the heart of that, is the hope of what we are doing here today in thinking about what does it mean 20 years after genocide. Because on the 7th of April this year, we will be commemorating the fact that exactly 20 years ago, genocide burst out onto the streets of Rwanda, and for those of us who were watching onto our screens around the world, but unfortunately most of us were not, and that includes me. At the time, I was creating the UK Holocaust Centre. I was busy with my project, with my builders, with my electricians. I had a lot on in my life. 24 hours a day I was working, and something was happening in Rwanda, wherever that was. And it took me weeks to work it out, and then it was too late, and I became the bystander of the next genocide of our world. I am a bystander. And I never want to be a bystander again. Because it meant that this time it was me that was watching the bodies floating down the river into the Nile, and I was a participant, and I could never claim that I was not. And so we come to this point in time where we say to ourselves, so what does this really mean in our world today? Actually, if you think about where we could be, and Your Excellency, having you with us here today, as a leader in Rwanda who has enabled stability and change and hope. In fact, we can talk about love and hope and healing, which is a remarkable, remarkable thing. On the 7th of April, we will begin a commemoration called Kwibuka, which means remember. This year, Kwibuka will take place in Rwanda, and as always, the community in Rwanda will come together, and they will remember, and they will mourn, and they will grieve, because it's only 20 years ago, and still the graves are being found and the bodies are being found and the burials are happening. And it's very real and it's very close and it's right now. And some of you in this room who are survivors of the genocide know what that means. And yet there is hope. Just a few weeks ago at the Kigali Genocide Memorial, something called the Urumuri Rutazima was lit, the flame of hope. And right now it's traveling around the 30 districts of Rwanda, long before the commemoration begins, almost like an Olympic torch that's going round, but this time it's the flame of hope. Because the hope of Rwanda didn't die during the genocide. Because of people like Yahya and others, the spirit remained. And because today the survivors are willing to be a part and an active part of their community, and because people are working together, and because the economy is being built and education is being invested in, there is a future there. But it's also our future too. Because as we were just discussing a moment ago, we're all part of the same humanity. Kwibuka, remember, unite, renew. Remember that it happened. Remember that we were a part of that too. Remember that actually we live in a world in which we are all connected. Remember that our values matter in the world in which we live. Remember that actually if we do not take the steps that we need to, then this will not be the last episode of genocide. So remember, it's your responsibility too. And so therefore unite with our friends and our colleagues and those who still mourn in Rwanda, but also unite together as a community of values so that we do go out into the world and we make a difference in the world as a united community. Because if you don't unite, then in fact the forces of division soon pull us apart. And renew. Rwanda is being renewed by the very spirit of the people that live there today and make it renewed, including some of our wonderful guests who are going to be sharing with us later. Renewing the spirit of that place because it's their home and because they make it what it is. But I know the many times that I go there as a guest, how I am renewed in my own spirit as a member of the human race, and bring that renewal out and renew our confidence in each other and our trust in each other that could have been broken, and renew our resolve to prevent genocide in the world today. Those are the underpinning pillars of Kwibuka, to remember, unite, and renew. And so this year we're going to be having the first world's crowdsourced commemoration. As the Urumuri Rutazima is touring around, people are telling their stories about life and about hope and about their experiences. But as that goes out into the wider world, you, all of you, can join. And today, we want you to join Kwibuka and to be a part of that global community. Because Kwibuka is about people using their SMS in the villages and sending it to the website so that it becomes a tweet, so that they can say from their village what it means to them to participate and share that with the global community. What does it mean to have campuses around the world participating in a global commemoration so that we really do share those values? And so this year, Kwibuka will be a global commemoration of which we are all a part, and I want to pay particular tribute to Palo Alto University for both Bill and Karen Froming for your leadership in that. A little earlier we heard about Anne Heyman and her philanthropy. A woman who gave and gave and gave. But I was considering, what does it mean to give in this context? And in the Jewish tradition, one of the great Jewish philosophers was Maimonides, who outlined the 8 stages of philanthropy. The highest of the 8 stages of philanthropy that he outlined was that your giving enables the self-reliance of others. Because it's not about you, it's not about us, it's about how they find themselves and can find that strength and that human spirit that's within them to be able to do what they are already capable of doing. And Heyman gave in that way. I want to pay tribute to Palo Alto University and to your program because I see the results of your program, and I know that you give in that way too. Because then it's not charity, it's sharing, it's living, it's loving in a very high level. Just a moment, I want to share with you a very brief film about Kwibuka for this year. But in so doing, I'd like to to close my remarks by saying that when we talk about genocide education, we're not talking about how we detail the historical facts, though we must know the historical facts because historical clarity is essential if denial is not to win over truth. It's not how we remember the past, although remembrance is vitally important because if we don't come alongside those who are mourning and suffering and still in pain, then we're just creating a distance between their pain and our lack of understanding. And so remembrance is about coming together, not looking back. It's also true to say that when we go back into that heart of that story of Yahya and the fact that he was able to reach out and find on the other side somebody who he didn't need to save, but at the risk of his own life did. It goes back to that principle, the very heart of who we are as human beings. And for me, as a person who comes and goes and spends time with genocide every day of my life in an academic context and with survivors of genocides around the world, it becomes that personal thing where you see that somebody reached out and touched your own life. You see, because when I see my niece, Ariella Aisha, who is the daughter of the girl he saved, I know when I take her to school and drop her off just how important his actions really were. Ladies and gentlemen, Kubuka, a short film about how we together as a global community are going to come alongside and share, not only in Rwanda, but all around the world, the message of remembrance and of unity and of renewal. Thank you.